Thanks, Tony. Hi, my name's Jordan Pring. I'm an intensive care paramedic and clinical support officer from SA Ambulance Service. Today we're going to talk about how SA Ambulance Service responded to the call, specifically our step 3 of responding, basically educating our clinicians on high-performance CPR. This is a poster that we put together as part of the promotional material for the educational workshops. You'll notice that we titled it Out of Hospital Cardiac Arrest Conference 2018. This was a deliberate ploy to really shift expectations and get people talking about this workshop. It was a 2-day workshop, and we did this over 51 times in metropolitan Adelaide and the regional centres of South Australia. The reason we titled it a conference is because we really wanted to highlight that this was not your everyday workshop or professional development workshop, we would call it. This was a 2-day long conference where you would hear from subject matter experts talking about their specialty in the field of cardiac arrest. In metropolitan Adelaide, we actually commissioned an aircraft hangar where we educated all our metropolitan staff. We also commissioned next door an admin building, which was essentially an office where we essentially built simulation rooms in that office that we tried to make reflect the environment that we often as paramedics find ourselves working in. Some of those environments were of interest and accurately, we think, reflected some of the environments as paramedics we find ourselves working in. Obviously, a large focus of these conferences was high-performance CPR and the pit crew model that helps facilitate high-performance CPR. But being 2 days long, we really wanted to focus on other aspects of cardiac arrest. So some of those other aspects included, CPR, when to start and when to stop. We looked at documentation of cardiac arrests and other medico-legal implications there. We revolutionised our airway approach, and like many other services, went to an early I-gel approach. We had a specific focus on post-ROS care, and my colleague Joe Shah did a lot of work in really revolutionising the way our clinicians manage the post-ROS patient. There were other aspects that we focused on, including scene leadership, and like a lot of your services, we put particular focus on the leadership role. We wanted our more senior clinicians, our ICPs, to step away from the patient so that could afford them the bandwidth to manage this case effectively. You'll see there our ICP has a card in his hand. This is probably our secret sauce. This is our cardiac arrest aid memoir. And this is an A5 card that lives in our monitor. And when our leader arrives on scene, they take out this card and they work their way through. Now, it's a quasi-checklist, I guess, but also has other properties, and I'll walk you through this. So up the top left here, we have BLS. This is the really simple stuff, and we want to make sure the basics are being adhered to. All the attention really in the early phase is focus on the basics. So we work our way through, ticking the boxes as we go. You'll note that we get to high-performance CPR, obviously a really important factor here, and we've highlighted that in green with a reference point down the bottom just to remind clinicians what high-performance CPR is. As you move your way along, you'll see down here that we have some data entry boxes. These boxes are for us to record charge and check times and also adrenaline administration. So what this does is not only allowed us to record when it happened, but also predict when the next one is due. So if you get your first charge and check done at the 30-second mark, and it is a shock, you would circle shock. You now know that the next charge and check is due at 2 minutes 30. We move along the checklist, essentially in the BLS side, making sure all the basics are being adhered to. Again, we fill out the boxes down the bottom. You'll see that we move along to ALS now, in the middle there. So this is for our paramedic and above clinical scope. The BLS, so this card can be used for our volunteer and ambulance officer workforce. Paramedics and above will take out the card and also move on to the ALS side of things. You'll notice on ALS we have down the bottom there in bold the H's and T's. A real big component of this conference was a large focus on the H's and T's, and what we really wanted to drill home to our clinicians was If you're not trying to identify H's and T's and you're not actively trying to address them, you're essentially wasting your time at this cardiac arrest. So we wanted to ensure that all our clinicians, further along, once the basics have been done, we're starting to think about H's and T's and we're considering all of them. So we move along and then we get a non-shockable rhythm and we disarm and hopefully get ROSC. So this is now another critical point here in the A5 aid memoir, is that when we achieve ROSC, you flip over the card and here's your post-ROSC side of things. So we really highlighted to staff that when you get ROSC, this is the new patient. We flip over the card and we announce to everyone, this is post-ROSC, we have a new patient. And credit to, again, my colleague Joe Shah for the work he did on the post-ROSC side of things. We went from no clinical governance or guidance really at all for the post-ROSC side of things to a robust clinical guideline, which really is highlighting best practice of post-ROSC care. You'll see there at the top left, we write down ASAP, the time of ROSC, and then we move along to really important stuff. So get the ventilations right, get the transport happening, get that metronome off and put the QRS volume on, which is that audible alarm of every time that QRS pops up on the monitor, a little beep happens so that you can audibly monitor tachycardia, bradycardia, etc. We move along and we make sure that we don't miss any of these observations. These observations in the early phase are critical for us to identify the unstable patient. We move along and as you see, the ALS side of things is also there, where once the basics are done, ALS can be achieved after that. I'm going to present to you two graphs here. This is 12 months pre-training and 12 months post-training of the high-performance CPR model. And as you can see there, the 12 months pre-training, relatively modest results there, pretty flat trend line there, not doing much at all. Now, I want to highlight this is VTVF, this is shockable rhythms, bystander witnessed, and these are our discharge from hospital. So the 12 months after the rollout of this educational package, we see a really encouraging trend line appear there. I'll get you to cast your attention away from what happened in February 19. That was a bit disappointing, but nonetheless, we could see that as we trained more staff, that graph improved. And starting in May 18, every month we trained about 12% of our staff. So as we were training, our results were improving also, which is really, really encouraging for the educators. The last verified data we have is May 2019, and that trend line there is sitting at 46%, which is essentially Utstein criteria, and we're really quite proud of that. Another way of presenting that data, the 12 months pre-training, it's again our discharge from hospital for bystander witness shockables that were discharged from hospital, and post-training, again, don't pay too much attention to February 19, don't know what happened there. But you can see there that when you plug that into the statistical software, we have a significant improvement in our results. So put simply, the 12 months pre-training compared to the 12 months post-training, we saw a 22.4% improvement in our ROSC rates and 31.4% improvement in our discharge from hospital. We're pleased to announce that if that trend line continues, we hope to have 100% survival by about May 2021. So David, Tony, lock us in for that conference there. We'll be really pleased to announce those results at that one there. So lock us in now, I reckon. Quick case study. So 4:28 on a Sunday morning, a wife hears her husband's noisy breathing from the other room. She calls 000. She commences CPR. We're dispatched priority 1 to a 51-year-old male, query Oka. At 4:32, the crew arrives, quick response time there. Patient found unresponsive in VF. We put an iGel in early and we get to work on our Oka management as per our algorithm. Around the 30-minute mark, the discussion on scene began about futility and whether we would call this cardiac arrest or whether we would keep working. The crew decided to press on. After 300 milligrams amiodarone, 21 shocks, 8 adrenaline, ROSC was gained almost an hour later at 5:25. This patient was transported to the local emergency department where his STEMI and hyperkalemia was addressed and reversed. 18 days later, this gentleman walks out of hospital. When we debriefed this case with the staff. They had recently done our OCA conference, and a lot of the discussion was around how they were inspired by identifying that this patient was young, had a bystander witnessed cardiac arrest, and found in VF that this is a patient you should most definitely throw everything at. And at that 30-minute mark, the discussion around futility was reversed around to, hey, no, we've got all these stars aligning, we're going to work hard on this gentleman. And as you can see, the result was obviously very, very positive. We trained not only Metro Adelaide, but we took this out on a travelling roadshow to regional South Australia. And about 2 weeks after we trained in Mount Gambier, the educational team received a letter from a GP in Mount Gambier who witnessed a cardiac arrest, and I'm going to read that letter to you now. Hi, I am a GP in Mount Gambier. Last Sunday, while going for a run around the Crater Lakes area, I encountered on Keegan Drive 4 of your staff attempting CPR on a collapsed patient at the roadside and offered my help. Unfortunately, the resuscitation was unsuccessful, but I was immensely impressed with the quiet efficiency, amazing teamwork and compassion shown for the dying man's wife by your officers. The way they rotated roles, ventilated the patient, chest compressions and preparation of drugs, etc., under clear leadership of one officer, but allowing for all views to be catered for when necessary, without any pause of the resuscitation process, while allowing the man's wife to be near and holding his hand at times, spoke to an extremely high standard of training, expertise and caring, and was almost like watching an effortless ballet or dance. Please, can you pass on my admiration and thanks on behalf of my fellow SA citizens to the officers concerned. When we received that email, it really spurred us on to say, hey, what we're doing is working, and people not only within SAS, SA Ambulance, are getting inspired by this, but the community are also noticing it too. So that was really awesome to get that letter. So where to from here? What does the future look like for SA Ambulance Service? Well, we've committed a minimum of 4 hours to OCA training every year. We identified that this is important, that we don't just roll out a 2-day conference and leave it at that. This is something that needs to be practiced, and it's obviously very, very important that we revisit this every year. We also, like previous speakers have spoken about today, acknowledge that if you focus on high performance and focus on that high-end patient, you have a trickle-down effect where that really impacts on all clinical interactions with patients. So we're really expecting good things from that. And obviously from here, we measure, improve, measure, improve, measure, improve. Thanks for listening.